for one or two teams. Goodyear, of course, cannot test now. There are no tyre tests before the Grand Prix, and with the smaller tyres from this year, that puts an added strain, an added question mark about just what the right decision is. Well, virtually all the teams have gone for the softer B compound, which will give them more grip, but potentially wear out a little faster. With just two teams, we've got the Benetton drivers, Schumacher and Patrese, both opting for the harder A compound, and the Ferrari of Alesi too. Alesi's hard driving style particularly suiting, again going for the harder, more durable A compound tyre.
So we'll see how that develops. Remember, Damon Hill in pole position for the first time has got extra worry and responsibility on his shoulders. He has started from...
Even with the A compound, it may well be to your advantage to make a pit stop. He will then have to go on to a set of B compound tyres. But Michael Schumacher has got two sets of A, so he has the option to stay with the A or go to the more competitive and softer B compound.
We see the top six of the Constructors' World Championship, with Williams Renault, of course, way ahead in the lead on 59 points, and McLaren's got 44. Well, there's a helicopter view of the starting grid. When you're on the grid, actually, it is very hot because the wind is blowing, but it's being stopped by the main grandstand. There we see the starting grid. For his first time in his career, Damon Hill is on pole position, and yes, he is going to race the car with the ABS anti-lock brake system. Alongside him, Alain Prost, and while we look through the whole of the starting grid, it's a very good performance from Martin Brundle and Mark Brundle. Rubens Barrichello with his best qualifying result ever. And I think Ayrton Senna and Michael Schumacher on the third and the fourth row, together with Jean Alesi, could prove to have some fireworks on that first lap. The only non-qualifier here today is Michele Alboreto. He was 0.4 of a second too slow to bump Andrea de Cesaris off the starting grid. Well, John, that first lap into the Adelaide hairpin, they're coming down with roughly 295 kilometers an hour, maybe a little less on that first lap, and then it's brake, and then, well, we saw last year Michael Schumacher taking out Ayrton Senna, and who knows, with the same thing behind this man, Damon Hill, anything could happen.
Well, we can suspect and speculate as to what may take place in the opening lap, but one thing is for sure, that Schumacher and Alesi, who are on that harder compound tyre, will have less braking efficiency than everybody else in the softer B compound. Now, last year Michael Schumacher on two occasions got it wrong into the Adelaide hairpin. I suspect that in the case of Alesi and Schumacher, they will want to try and get away with the front row cars as quickly as possible. In fact, I believe that they will want to climb all over the back of the two Ligier Renaults as they come under braking into that Adelaide hairpin bend. So we believe this is going to be, let's say, a rather tense moment on the opening lap of the Grand Prix. But for Damon Hill, all he has to do is execute one of those wonderful starts we've seen him make this year and take the lead into the first corner and really forget about his wing mirrors and just concentrate on making the best of his pole position.
The last time Damon was on pole position was in his Formula 3000 days, and he did it a couple of times that year, and he used to rocket off into the distance, forget about everybody behind him, and have a huge lead on the first couple of laps. Well, he didn't win that many races because the car used to let him down, but Damon knows what it's like to start from pole position. Yes, John, he did spin off a couple of times as well, but he knows what it's like to start from pole position, and he's going to make full use of it. There's Rubens Barrichello, starting from 8th position on the grid, his best qualifying performance ever. And actually, they just changed brakes, John, because the team reckons it's going to be so hard on brakes here. They've gone for different discs and brake pads.
Well, I think the braking system available to teams, there are a number of choices, and some are based on cost considerations, others are based on performance considerations. Right now, for me, performance is what's important, and in particular for the Jordan team, as they are one of the teams who currently are right on the bubble of falling outside of the top 10 teams, and that affects them directly in the second half of the year because of the benefits and bonuses that are paid to the teams based on their first half of the season results.
Well, we're leaving the grid with Alain Prost, who is on that front row, and everybody away, including Michael Andretti, who came into the pits a couple of times during those warm-up laps before, and they had a problem on the upshift. something in the computer. I mean, in the McLaren, everything's done by computer, but on the upshift they did have a problem, but he is in his race car. In the spare car are Alain Prost and Riccardo Patrese.
Well, this season really has seen Michael Andretti go through the gamut of problems and bad luck, misfortune, and once again pressure before the Grand Prix itself starts. And really Michael Andretti must wonder, what do I have to do to ensure a trouble-free weekend and really get myself back up to the performance I know I'm capable of, and hopefully maybe back onto the podium, or onto the podium in the case of Grand Prix racing, for the first time in his career.
We're starting halfway around this lap, which is 4.2 kilometers, 2.6 miles long, and we're going to race 72 laps.
We were talking last night to Damon Hill, and I mentioned to him that I thought on this parade lap, at this point he should really slow down a great deal. Now you can see the cars are still on the opposite side of the circuit, coming down into that 180-degree hairpin bend. I would suggest to Damon that he wants to slow them down even more than he is currently doing. The longer he has to spend on the grid on his first pole position in a Grand Prix, the more he'll start to think about it and the more pressure he'll put himself under. And my feeling and suggestion was, minimize the time that you're on the grid. Try and get the field to bunch up as close as possible as you start to now drop downhill towards the final chicane and into the pit straight, so as you don't put yourself under the pressure. It's very, very difficult, believe me, when you're on pole position for the first time in your career, not to be affected by the pressure. Well, Damon and Alain Prost now filing onto the start line and coming up onto their positions, but there you see, that's the midfield, and they're still making their way down through that chicane, down into that final Lacey hairpin bend. This is the corner that has caught out a lot of people throughout the 2 days of practice and qualifying. But Damon now in his pole position and really just waiting for that green flag at the end of the grid to be waved, and then he will take the start from his first pole.
Well, the grid is forming up. We just had Barry Griffin in from Goodyear, and he said, well, Riccardo Patrese had made a late change to A-compound tires, so we've got 3 cars on the grid now, which is all ready to go. The green flag is waved. Now we're going to wait 5 seconds for the red light to go on. There's the red light, and there's the green light, and a very good start from Damon Hill, and also from Martin Brundle. A very good start indeed from Martin Brundle, and Damon Hill takes the lead into that very fast left-hander. Then it's Alain Prost, Martin Brundle, Mark Blundell, and I think it's Ayrton Senna.
It is Ayrton Senna, but a great start from Damon Hill, but he was just that little bit apprehensive coming into that first double left-hand corner after the start. I think memories of South Africa on that opening lap when he got caught out on tyres that weren't right up to temperature, but Damon has the lead. Prost second, the 2 Ligiers third and fourth, Senna fifth, and Michael Schumacher sixth.
Behind that, John, there's a very good battle between Rubens Barrichello and Jean Alesi, because Barrichello went right round the outside of the Adelaide hairpin, braked very late indeed, and took that position away from Jean Alesi, and is now in 8th position. Or I think Alesi's got it back, actually.
Alesi, yes, he's taken back the place that Rubens Barrichello, I think, somewhat cheekily snatched away from Jean Alesi. Now Alesi is on that harder compound tyre. He will not have the grip from the tyre that certainly Barrichello and more or less everybody else outside of Schumacher and Patrese have. And well, let's see what happens once the race settles down. We're still on the opening lap. Damon Hill coming up to complete his first flying lap in the lead from the pole position.
Well, and let's have a look at the computer, what the lead is Damon Hill has here on that very first lap. It is 1.6 seconds. Blundell, Senna and Schumacher complete the top 6, and everybody safely through, all 26 cars, no retirements on the first lap. Well, Damon's putting his foot down, John.
Well, he's got every opportunity to do so, and this is what Damon really must do. Alain Prost, I mean, the canniest of Grand Prix drivers, probably at this point, well, I'm not going to worry very much about Damon Hill. Allow him to run off and take a lead, because this is a long race. It's 72 laps. It's very, very warm weather conditions, and he's not really going to be too concerned at this particular point.
Again, in the background, we saw Alessandro Zanardi this time trying to overtake Michael Andretti on the inside of the Adelaide hairpin. And there we see Okio Katayama running wild over the curbs, losing some time. But in the background, whoa, here is still Damon Hill leading. Alain Prost second, Martin Brundle in third. The field spreading out a little bit, but everybody is still on the circuit. And John, we said in Canada it could well be a race of attrition. With the weather like that, like it is in France at the moment, I wouldn't be surprised it's going to be a race of attrition.
Well, the attrition may not be of a mechanical nature, could easily be of a physical nature. With this very high temperature, and it's not the most physical circuit, let's say, compared to Silverstone. But this corner here, the Estoril corner, a very, very high load indeed on the driver. And really, I suspect many drivers will be looking forward to later in the race when the circuit probably becomes...
Damon Hill extending the gap to 2.3 seconds on that second lap. And I also think, John, if Damon gets his foot down early, then he basically puts Prost under pressure as well.
Well, I would wait. And look at that. Prost, the back end of the car, stepped out very unexpectedly indeed. That's not something Alain Prost will appreciate. But I think really we're still very, very early into this Grand Prix. We saw, remember, a similar thing in Barcelona a couple of months ago where Damon took the lead, extended the lead very quickly, then Alain Prost ate back into it, finally took the lead away from Damon Hill. Then Damon returned the compliment and started to push Alain very hard. Unfortunately, Damon retired on that particular day. But since Barcelona, Damon has matured, and by the Grand Prix he's getting more racecraft, more race sense, and he would love to win the French Grand Prix in spite of the situation within his team, where it really is in the interest of Alain Prost, from the team point of view, to be the victor here this afternoon.
Four Renault engines still out in front of 7,500 Renault guests. And what a result they had in qualifying. And John, although this circuit has been criticized, I think there are actually more spectators than people thought there were going to be.
Well, at 1 o'clock though, and Michael Schumacher looking to find a way past Ayrton Senna, who made an error coming into the Adelaide hairpin bend. Senna recovered, Schumacher wasn't able to take advantage, and everything remains status quo. But there are officially, at 1 o'clock, 70,000 spectators at Magny-Cours. That's a very, very good crowd indeed.
Well, that bodes well for a week's time in Silverstone. But let's get back to the action here at Magny-Cours. We're riding with Michael Schumacher in pursuit of Ayrton Senna, and there, the first retirement of the day, Alessandro Zanardi. Well, Lotus is not going through a happy time at the moment, and this is not going to make their day. Zanardi out on lap 4, out of 72.
Well, Damon Hill and Alain Prost really just running away from the opposition. Damon Hill is some 7 seconds ahead of third place man and fellow Brit Martin Brundle in his Ligier Renault. Martin a further 1.7 seconds ahead of Mark Blundell. Then Ayrton Senna and Michael Schumacher very close behind Rubens Barrichello, and 4.5 seconds behind Michael Schumacher, with John Alesi now into 8th place. So we haven't seen that overtake from Rubens Barrichello. And really, I think the penalty that Schumacher and John Alesi are paying is in that slightly harder compound. The grip level appears to be significantly less than the B compound. And you see Michael Schumacher can just about maintain the pace of Ayrton Senna in 5th place, but hasn't got enough grip and speed to challenge him. And he ought to be able to do that because he's got full advantage of that 7 Series Ford HP engine, which is more powerful than that engine by Ayrton Senna.
Well, Alessandro Zanardi back on the circuit, or into the pits actually. He might have been push-started, so that would mean Alessandro is out of the race. He's coming in very slowly into the pits. Damon Hill leads Alain Prost by the end of lap 4 by 2.3 seconds. Then it's Martin Brundle and Mark Blundell. That's the situation here in Magny-Cours. We'll be back after these short messages on Eurosport.
Barnett, although to his credit is the fact that this, as Jonathan has told you, Magny-Cours is the home of the leading Ligier team. Their workshops are just a stone's throw away from here, and this is where they do all their testing. So if Ligier don't know this circuit, no one does. But all credit to Brundle and Blundell, who are third and fourth, as you watch Senna and Schumacher, and the German is not giving up.
You see there very clearly how much difference that wing is making. Senna was a long way ahead of Schumacher out of the Estoril corner at 140 miles an hour, but Schumacher made up perhaps 6 or 7 car lengths all the way down towards the Adelaide hairpin. It wasn't enough to get by, but certainly he's putting heavy pressure on Senna. We've heard that Barrichello has actually passed the Lacey. This is a superb performance from the Brazilian in the Jordan, doing a great job, and that means that he'll be then right then behind Schumacher.
Looking back, this rather weird camera angle from Ayrton Senna's McLaren at Schumacher's Benetton, which we're now with, looking forward at Senna's McLaren, and the race order on lap 6 coming to the end of it. We're with Senna again. Damon Hill leads Alain Prost by 1.8 seconds. In third position is Martin Brundle, who's now 8.5 seconds behind Prost. There is the battle for fourth position. Blundell, Senna and Schumacher. As Jonathan has just told you, up to 7th place magnificently has come young Rubens Barrichello. 8th is Alesi, 9th is Comas, 10th is Wendlinger, 11th is Suzuki in the footwork. In 12th position, Riccardo Patrese. Johnny Herbert is 18th. Now, Senna versus Schumacher. We're on lap 7. It's a 72-lap race, so already, and it seems as though the race has only just started, we're almost 1/10 of the way through it. And Ayrton Senna, you...
Welcome back here on Eurosport, where the top 6 is still unchanged, but Rubens Barrichello has found a way past John Alesi and is now in 7th position. Eric Comas is 9th and Carl Wendlinger is 10th.
Well, there the battling Brits, Brundle and Blundell, and enjoying competitiveness here in Manicure, but Ayrton Senna's closing down very gradually on Mark Blundell, and the problem Senna's going to have, of course, is something like 120 horsepower deficiency, because that's the figure that McLaren believe they're down on these Renault V10 engines here at Manicure. I thought it was somewhere around about 80 to 82, 100. They say forget it, a lot more than that.
Well, Barrichello crosses the line. That could well be a problem for Jean Alesi, because Barrichello is already 4 seconds in front of the Ferrari, and that is a very long way in a couple of laps. Still going is Michael Andretti, despite the problems he had before the race. He's in 14th position, and Derek Warwick is 17th. Johnny Herbert is in 18th position, and that's all the Brits, because Brundle is still in 3rd, Blundell is still in 4th, and Damon Hill, here we see the number 0 Williams is still leading this Grand Prix on lap 8 out of 72.
But Alain Prost is only 1.6 seconds going across the line, and it looks less than that to me as they drop down the hill to complete their 8th lap. And this is almost a copybook of what we saw in Barcelona. Prost, let's say, cautious off the start. He didn't get the lead. He did have a little look down the inside. Damon shut the door on that opening lap. He allowed Damon then to take advantage of his pole position. Now he's hunting him down. And it's, I think, really a matter of time before we see what the internal decision making has been within the Williams team, because I'm quite sure that at this stage in the championship, really it is in the interests of the team, and of which Damon Hill is a major part, that Alain Prost ought to be able to score the maximum he can. That's 10 points. And even if it means on the last lap, as has happened in the past, where the other driver in the team has had to pull over to allow the driver with the maximum points to score more points, that may well be the case. We will see here this afternoon.
We're riding with Michael Schumacher, and I hope we will see him down that long straight, John, into the Adelaide hairpin, because once he gets into Ayrton Senna's toe, that car is definitely much quicker on the straight.
We've got a Kia Katayama also into the pits for a problem, but certainly Schumacher, as we have said, has got more horsepower. There we see Katayama in. Certainly they've changed wheels, tyres, and I can't believe that was a pit stop just for tyres. May well have locked up a brake. some part on the circuit we didn't see, but certainly one would not expect to see somebody in the pits at the end of the 8th lap needing to replace those tyres.
Well, Damon responding. The gap is still 1.3 seconds. It's saying roughly the same. It's early days yet, and of course we are gonna have tyre stops in this race. And now, John, if you were Damon Hill, would you go in first, or would you wait until Alain Prost gets into the pits?
I would do what I felt was right at the time. If I suspected that my lap times were beginning to drop, I was losing grip, and principally it's in this very, very long right-hand estuarial corner onto the straight. That's where it's most noticeable, and that's where you will lose probably greatest time when you begin to lose grip. The left front starts to give up, the loads are very high, and therefore that's the point where I might decide it is prudent to come into the pits and fit a fresh set of B Goodyear compound tyres. But Prost is closing out, and you can see it visually as they come up to put a lap on a Kia Katayama. That's down, in my view, to less than a second.
Well, traffic, Damon Hill, and well, Damon is getting some experience with lapping the traffic, but he is still very cautious indeed. And the gap is now less than a second. I think it might even be less than half a second. It's 0.6 of a second. While we're having this rearward view on the car of Damon Hill, and there we see how far Alain Prost is behind.
And of course, we've seen this rearward view from the Williams before. Here is the best illustration of what active ride suspension does for a racing car. The car itself, the chassis remains level with the road, but as the wheels going up and down, and that is why this car, or partly why this car is so competitive. And Alain Prost, suffering from a little bit of fluid discharge from the back of either Kia Katayama's Yamaha engine or his teammate Damon Hill's Renault engine. Certainly, it's not uncommon for teams to overfill water and oil, particularly oil, and then allow the oil tank and oil system to find its own level by simply just pumping it out through the overflow pipe.
Damon Hill running with the ABS. Well, that's where the oil came from, I suppose, John.
Well, we did see a wisp of blue smoke a little bit earlier, and that's now a little conflagration in the back of a Kia Katayama's Yamaha engine Tyrrell, and the marshal falls over with the extinguisher, sets it off, and the white flag now being waved a little bit further up the circuit to warn the oncoming traffic that there is a car off the circuit. Well, there is extinguisher powder being poured, dumped all over the rear of that car, and that was what looks, it may not have been an engine blow up, it might have been simply a major oil leak, but some people would say, well, that's the same thing as a blow up.
At the end of lap 11, Damon Hill leads Alain Prost by 0.8 of a second. Then it's Martin Brundle, a massive 13 seconds behind. Mark Blundell is in 4th. Ayrton Senna and Michael Schumacher complete the top 6, while a further 7 seconds behind them is Rubens Barrichello. The top 10 is rounded out by Karl Wendlinger, while Aguri Suzuki is in 11th place. Still, Damon Hill leads on his 12th lap, 60 to go. So it's a long, long way yet, and roughly 8 to 12 laps till we see the first of the planned pit stops. Now, I think, John, the big question is, it's Michael Schumacher right behind Ayrton Senna. Michael is on the harder compound tyres, so he should be able to last longer.
That's the case, but in fact both tyres appear to be wearing about the same rate, and although this man Jean Alesi may well have it in his own mind to go through without a pit stop, I think really that the downside is that you're going to lose overall more time in attempting that manoeuvre than coming into the pits and changing to a fresh set of tyres, which in the case of Jean Alesi would have to be a B compound. In the case of Michael Schumacher, well, he would have the option of staying with the A's or going to the B's. In my mind, he ought to go to the B's, but in Michael Schumacher's case, he is aggressive in his driving style, and he was chewing up those B compound tyres really a bit too quickly, and he may then find himself having to make a third pit stop to once again go back out and complete the race.
Eric Gomez, still wearing the sunglasses behind his visor, is driving right behind Jean Alesi in 9th position, and Gomez has been in the top 10 consistently all through the weekend. But John, you didn't agree with the sunglasses, did you?
I don't like anybody wearing glasses, to be honest, in motor racing. I think that it is a handicap, and I know that many drivers who have worn spectacles have changed over to lenses. I just feel that certainly wearing a glass, whether it's a sunglass or a lens glass, it can be a distraction, and it can also really, the very, very, very finest of judgments can be impaired. It's my opinion. I don't know whether other people might share that, but it's one I've held for a long time. Fortunately, I always had very good eyesight and didn't have to bother with the things.
Going around the long Estoril right-hander, and I've got a feeling that Damon Hill is getting more oversteer than he would like to have. Coming onto the main straight, the car was sliding, and also on that long Estoril corner, it seems that Alain Prost is generating a little more speed.
Well, I think that's simply because after the opening corner on the first lap, Damon did rush off and try to establish a lead, but that's where the experience, and you have to say the race intelligence of Alain Prost comes into play. He is aware of the distance of the race, he knows how to pace himself and judge himself, and he knows how crucial a corner like Estoril is. So it's not important to be pushing like mad with the advantage that this team has with these two cars. They can afford to run at a very competitive pace, but still much quicker than the opposition.
Onto the last straight, and then we get that chicane, which drops down quite a lot. It's very small and narrow, and then that 90-degree Lycée corner, and Damon Hill completes lap 14 out of 72. And while he is doing that, he's catching Andrea de Cesaris, and the lead is growing a little bit again. But all through the weekend, John, and I think we're seeing the same thing now. It's Alain Prost catching up on that first half of the circuit, and then Damon Hill sort of gaining a little when we get through the second half of the circuit.
Well, here's a battle going on for fourth place. Mark Blundell, Ayrton Senna, and Michael Schumacher just trying to tuck in the slipstream of Ayrton Senna. And you can see the difference in performance between the Renault and the Ford engines. On acceleration, the Renault just leaves the Ford gasping through Estoril corner. Ayrton Senna picks up again, but really it's difficult. That corner has caused McLaren, amongst other teams, great difficulty indeed, and they've been working all weekend to minimize the difference between being off the throttle as you change down gear and then picking the throttle back up again, and that has a major effect on the aerodynamic center of pressure, which is a crucial and vital part of the balance of a Grand Prix car. What in effect happens is when you lift off, there's no exhaust gas going into the underbody and into the diffuser at the rear of the car, and therefore all the pressure, the center of pressure, and therefore the downforce, rushes to the front, puts a massive amount of downforce on the front wheels, and the back wheels then want to come round to meet the front wheels. Finding the medium between the two is what McLaren have been chasing all weekend.
The gap after 15 laps is still 1.2 seconds, but the gap with Martin Brundle in third is growing and growing, 17.4 seconds. Basically, he's losing just over a second a lap. Mark Blundell has got Ayrton Senna in his mirrors, but still after 15 laps, this is the best hope for the Ligier team for success in a long, long time.
And those are large globules of tyre rubber, and you can see it with Mark Blundell. He's running out wide earlier at the exit of that Estoril corner. He will be struggling now with a little bit of left front tyre deterioration. Ayrton Senna's really got to try as best he can to get himself drawn up into the back wing, the rear wing of Mark Blundell's Ligier, that when he comes up to the Adelaide hairpin, he might find himself in a position. Now, remember, the Ligier is a passively sprung car. It doesn't have the advantages of ride-height control or active suspension as Ayrton Senna's car has, and that's an advantage for Senna under braking, disadvantage for Mark Blundell conversely.
Well, Damon Hill completes lap 16. Alain Prost has gained a tenth of a second, and we still have a lot of cars in the race. It's very early days yet, but we still have 23 cars running out of 25 because Ukio Katayama and Alessandro Zanardi have both retired. Fastest lap so far by Damon Hill, but that is sure to be tumbling. Last year the fastest lap was a 17.070 by Nigel Mansell.
Just watching Martin Brundle exiting the Estoril corner, his car looks much better than his teammates, and that just, I think, is further confirmation that Mark Blundell's left front tyre is probably getting a little bit tired. He may have pushed very hard to maintain position with his teammate, but the penalty he's paying now is extra wear on the outside edge of that left front tyre.
Well, John, Martin Brundle is regarded as one of the best racers in the paddock at the moment.
Most definitely he is. We saw Martin do some outstanding Grand Prix last year when he was driving for Benetton Ford, and many people felt that he was rather harshly treated when he was, let's say, not invited to remain with the team for a further season. I thought the partnership of Schumacher and Brundle was a very good one, but decisions in Grand Prix racing are not always made purely on ability and experience.
Well, Damon Hill and Alain Prost are still the leaders of this French Grand Prix, and they've got a mega lead over Martin Brundle. It's now grown to 19.5 seconds. That's the top three after 17 laps out of 72. Please rejoin us after these very short messages here on Eurosport.
And somebody's gone on the dust. Let's have a look to see who that is. It's a Lotus. It's Johnny Herbert. Johnny Herbert out. Oh dear. Poor Lotus, poor Herbert. Well, Jonathan Palmer is so used to interviewing the unfortunate Johnny Herbert when he's retired, but Johnny getting out of the cockpit. That's yet another race, and there he spins. Now you can see Berger being chased, and that's Gerhard Berger that just went out of the shot, followed by Derek Warwick, followed by Luca Badoer, well up in the Lola Ferrari, as Johnny Herbert spins out of the race, and that is his fourth retirement of 1993, riding with Prost.
Another blow to the Lotus team, but Johnny has been complaining of difficult handling with the Lotus. Of course, it's got the active suspension, and it looked like it caught him out there. I don't think there's any sign of anybody actually touching him. But what's interesting here is that, having said that, that Damon looks like to have a potentially terminal problem, his lap times certainly don't indicate it. He's maintaining a cushion over Prost, although Prost is probably not going to be. And now we've got some interesting times now with Damon starting to do some lapping, and Prost right behind. He'll be concerned to try and keep that distance throughout this section.
Yeah, they've just gone past Thierry Boutsen, the Jordan driver, and Boutsen is in 19th place. Now they're coming up to Luca Badoer, who is 18th in the Lola Ferrari. And this is a real test for Damon Hill, because he's got to pick the moment to get past the man in the front, hopefully making it impossible for Alain Prost to follow him through, as he did there, taking Luca Badoer. Now, the next challenger after Luca Badoer is Christian Fittipaldi, and then Derek Warwick. So, look for the Minardi with Christian Fittipaldi.
Welcome back here on Eurosport. We are just about to complete lap 19 out of 72, and Damon Hill has hit traffic. And that is the battle for 16th place, which Gerhard Berger is leading, and he is holding up quite a few people, but Damon Hill is coping with the traffic very well, John.
He's done a great job. He took opportunity, but watch Prost. Prost has got the charge out of Estoril. He's in the slipstream of Damon Hill. He may have a little look down the inside. Damon has moved to the right. Christian Fittipaldi has given him space to go through, and Alain Prost looking for that space as well. Both get through. Damon, I must say, and I'm delighted to see it, is now, in my mind, showing a little bit more aggression, and he's saying to Alain Prost, well, Alain, okay, we are teammates, we are, if you like, battling for the lead of this Grand Prix, but I'm not just going to open the door and say, come on in.
Although we are in France. Well, Derek Warwick's the next one to be overtaken by Damon Hill, and that is going to be after this chicane, and that is the Imola chicane. Well, Derek is not really problem with Derek is, of course, he's right behind Gerhard Berger as well, John. Whoops,
And
Damon
Damon
running wide. Now, is Alain Prost going to go for the inside? No, Damon is closing the door on Alain Prost. Well done. Oh, brilliant one.
Yes, good move. Damon took the initiative there and forced his way down the inside of Derek Warwick. Of course, then Alain Prost unable to find a way through, but Warwick pulling way over to the right. Again, Alain Prost cuts through cleanly, and we've got one of the Ferraris in the pits.
Well, I think that's Gerhard Berger. We can see him on the screen now, changing tyres. And, well, is it a big surprise to see Berger in first one to change tyres?
I don't think it is, and it's right on the button of Goodyear's information on lap 20. Let's say the first of the serious runners in the pits for a tyre change. And Warwick again making an error in Adelaide. Christian Fittipaldi usurping him. He's now 16th, Derek, down to 17th. And this is really, I think, Allard, going to be the story of the race. People are going to make minor little errors under braking or trying to get the power on too soon, and people will slide underneath you.
Well, John, I was talking to Rubens on the grid, and he said, well, one of the problems we're going to have is that the rear tyres are getting so hot, it's unbelievable. Then Martin Brundle said that it was going to be really slippery, and that's what Mark's just found out.
Indeed, and I think Mark is the first of a number of people who will find out the same thing. Now, we don't know why Mark has found himself in the gravel trap up against the tyre wall, but his race is unquestionably over, and that now elevates Ayrton Senna to 4th, Michael Schumacher 5th, and Rubens Barrichello up into the 6th, and one vital and, let's say, very crucial point for the Cecil Jordan Hart team.
Well, there's Thierry Boutsen talking about the team. There's Barrichello's teammate in the pits after 21 laps. He is about to change tyres. This is a regular tyre stop. Now, the Jordan team has been practicing this. 6.8 seconds, average, I would say.
Well, what it's done is given them an opportunity to do a tyre stop under race conditions, under pressure, when the car, the tyres, every part of that race car will be red hot. So when Barrichello does decide to make his stop, at least they will have found some rhythm, and they will not be quite under such pressure had Barrichello been the first of the two in.
Damon driving very defensively now, and I would not be surprised if we see Damon Hill in to stop for a fresh set of tyres very soon. I was going to say on this lap, but it's either this or next lap. I expect Damon Hill to get into the pits. The car is sliding a lot, and Alain Prost is now very close indeed. Well, it's not this lap. Now we see what the gap is. Well, we've raced for half an hour.
Really, I think for Alain Prost to take the lead away from Damon Hill, he's going to have to find a way with the aid of traffic, and Damon is displaying very good maturity. He's used the traffic very much to his advantage, and of course he should do. He's leading the Grand Prix, and he wants to use traffic. He wants to put himself in a position where he doesn't overrun into a corner behind a car. He may well lift off that little bit earlier and use his position on the circuit to his advantage, and to some extent then minimize or mitigate against his teammate, who will have to wait that bit longer until maybe he's exited the corner.
The next one they come up against is Philippe Alliot, who's running in 14th position, and we are on lap 23. We're just over half an hour, so this is going to be a fairly short Grand Prix, around 90 minutes. And Philippe Alliot, the man who a couple of weeks ago drove a magnificent race at Le Mans, I must say, for the Peugeot team, has been a little slower than teammate Eric Comas here during the last couple of days in Magny-Cours. Well, Damon Hill hasn't gone into the pits. Alain Prost has not gone into the pits. Someone else has.
Well,
right,
one of the Saubers dropped in, and somebody else, maybe see one of the two Lamborghini Larousse was in the pits as well. So Comas in, and I think it was Carl Wendlinger in his Sauber came in immediately behind him. And there we are now exiting out of Estoril, all this long straight down to the Adelaide hairpin. Alain Prost picking up gradually the slipstream. You see the gap reducing, but, well, Alain not quite close enough to take advantage.
The footwork out of the pits, and a Sauber out of the race. Well, number 30 is JJ Lehto.
Yes, another disappointing race for JJ Lehto. Again, rumours are beginning to circulate in the pit lane as to what will happen at Sauber in 1994, and certainly both drivers very much on their toes and looking for a good performance. Well, unfortunately for JJ, today's performance will not count for very much. His race is over. In the meantime, his teammate Carl Wendlinger currently running in 13th spot, but remember he was in the pits for a tyre change.
Well, is any of those two gonna go into the pits? Damon Hill is not, Alain Prost is not. I suppose, John, if Damon can hang in there, I would say, in the lead long enough, they might get away with just one stop.
I would anticipate that's very much in the minds of the Williams team, and of course they're able to run consistently quicker than anyone else, about a second I would say, so they're not really loading up very heavily the tyres. They're running quickly, but the tyres are not being worked as hard as the people who are behind and chasing. And Alain Prost, you saw hand coming up to the visor, wiping away the residue of oil and maybe some water. And normally a driver would have 2 or possibly 3 rip-offs on his helmet. I would have thought that Alain Prost wouldn't have used all 3 of those at this early point in a Grand Prix, but we did see a lot of fluid and rubber going on his visor some 10 laps ago.
He did have 2 on, John, and I don't know whether he's used one after Katayama stop, but he doesn't want to use the other one now. Carl Wendlinger came past the pits, look, sounding very sick indeed, and I'm not sure whether he's going to last very much longer. Well, the gap between Hill and Prost is still 0.8 of a second. Well, we're watching 3rd place man, and that's a long time ago we've seen him. Martin Brundle, his best finish ever came during the Italian Grand Prix last year when Williams did hit trouble, and if Williams does hit trouble, he's in a perfect position again to pick up the pieces.
Alors, Riccardo Patrese directly below me in for his tyre stop, and that was pretty impressive, just over 5 seconds for Patrese and the Benetton team. Now, well, there's no big rush here below us to put a fresh set of rubber out for Michael Schumacher, but he will be the next man in the Benetton pit to make a pit stop. Remember, Schumacher started the race on A's, and he is still running in 5th spot behind Ayrton Senna.
Martin Brundle in the pits. The Ligier in 3rd place is in for changing tyres. That will elevate Ayrton Senna into 3rd and Michael Schumacher into 4th, but of course they've got to make pit stops as well. Martin Brundle out. It was a fairly good stop, and Brundle for the moment down to probably 5th position behind Senna and Schumacher. Rubens Barrichello is still running in a very lonely 6th position, while John just saw someone coming.
Yes, Carl Wendlinger coming into the pits slowly, but now we've got Michael Schumacher's pit prepared, but I can't read the codes in these tyres. The teams have got codes rather than the letters. And we see now Jean Alesi, he is in the pits. This is a man who thought he could have gone through the race without a stop for tyres. Remember, another man starting on A tyres, Jean Alesi in the pits, and he's out of the pits. Did he go on to another set of A's? Or he only had one set of A's, he had to go on to B's. So let's anticipate Alesi picking up the pace.
Alain Prost is closing in again on Damon Hill. We're riding with the man who was on pole for the first 7 of the Grand Prix, and there on the braking we see Alain Prost's car weaving a little bit, and Damon Hill, of course, John, we mustn't forget, has started with the ABS system.
But Damon's car also gave a little wobble, as we see Ayrton Senna now, he's into the pits for his first tyre stop. The McLaren are pretty slick in the pits, and the Michael Schumacher in as well, and this is the battle for 4th place. Michael Schumacher, I can hear his engine revving on the limiter. Out of the pits, who is first? We weren't able to see whether Senna got out.
Senna did go out a little bit earlier before Michael Schumacher, so Schumacher is still in 4th, and it will put Martin Brundle back in 3rd position, so that's all back as it was. Well, Michael Andretti is right in front of Damon Hill, race leader. They're all going to go into the pits. Oh, Damon is following those two. I don't know whether that is lucky or not, but I don't think so. Now Damon Hill into the pits. He is the first pit, so if the team is quicker than Michael Andretti, then he will get out of the pits before Andretti does. And Andretti is just a little bit earlier than Damon Hill, so that's a drag race till the end of the pit lane.
Well, it's a shame for Damon, because he now will have to find his way past Michael Andretti, and that was just what he didn't want. That Williams pit stop, round about 7 seconds, not as fast as the McLaren stop, and not as fast as we've seen from Ferrari or from Benetton, and that may well have cost Damon Hill the lead of this French Grand Prix. Alain Prost, of course, the man now in the lead of the French Grand Prix, but he will, I would imagine, within the next 2 laps be in the pits, and this will be, let's say, the pit stop for the lead of the French Grand Prix.
Well, also interesting is to see what lap time Alain Prost can do on his very first free flying lap. Is it much quicker than Damon Hill was going, or is it roughly the same? We will see very shortly, hopefully, unless Alain Prost, of course, decides to come into the pits now. Well, this is, I thought this was going to happen. It's a Sauber driving out of the pits, and they were both very lucky indeed.
Well, all the luck went against Damon Hill. He got Michael Andretti, then Karl Wendlinger, and that was what he did not need. He wanted to exit the pits under full power and get a run out onto the Estoril corner and all the way down the straight. Alain Prost has made capital out of it, and he will maintain that advantage, I'm sure, until the point he decides himself to make a pit stop. At the end of the 28th lap, he had some 17.5 seconds advantage over Damon Hill, and I'm quite convinced when he does come in himself, he will not lose 17.5 seconds on the lap.
Luca Badoer getting into his pits for a new set of tires. Badoer is actually running in 12th position, and I don't think the team was expecting him to run that high that early in the race. Of course, the team does have a very good finishing record. Well, Damon Hill on his very first lap of a new set of Goodyear tires, and he doesn't run into traffic. It's interesting to see what he could do. He did a 20.5 very early in the race, which means that the tanks are emptier, it's all a bit lighter, so maybe Damon could go a little bit faster than that. He still has fastest lap, and that was a long time ago. In the meantime, both the cars have lapped the whole field up to 6th place, and Alain Prost is in the pits. Alain Prost is in the pits now. Is this going to be a very good tire stop indeed? It is. 6.9 seconds. Now Prost out of the pits. Where is Damon Hill? Damon Hill passes us now, so Prost is still leading this Grand Prix, but can Damon into the Adelaide hairpin capitalize on the fact that Alain Prost tires are not yet up to temperature? Damon Hill is right behind the man we're riding with, Alain Prost.
Well, again, Alain Prost, you see, wiping his visor, but Damon Hill coming alongside, and Damon Hill has, I believe, retaken the lead, and Alain Prost not very happy about that at all. Well, in fact, it was Damon going left then right. Alain Prost defended his lead. He does not want to give that lead up. Now, he doesn't want to have to fight to defend his lead. He wants to, let's say, allow Damon to sit there and defend his lead. But maybe Damon Hill has decided, I've defended and supported a lot during the season. I've stepped aside and allowed Alain Prost to come through. Maybe I'm going to put on a show here at Manicourt at the French Grand Prix, and maybe make Alain Prost's victory, if that is what's going to be the case, a more worthy one as a result of my efforts.
Also, Damon doing himself a lot of favors by showing everybody that he is a fast racing driver. Frank Williams knew it, Patrick Head knew it, I think most people know it, John, and you got to give the boy time to become like a mature Grand Prix driver.
Indeed you do. Probably the last person to recognize it is Damon Hill himself, and you know, stepping into a highly competitive car and team like the Williams team, and suddenly be on the front row of your first Grand Prix, have your first pole position in Grand Prix racing at your 8th Grand Prix, is a mighty burden to carry. But Damon lost time as he exited the Lacey hairpin bend, and you can see the gap that has opened up as they now turn down towards the Adelaide hairpin, and Luca Badoer has got a flat tyre or a broken rear suspension or both.
Well, whatever it has, John, I just said that team had such a good reliability and finishing record.
Well, looks like the left rear corner, in fact, something is broken. There we see it under braking. The car beginning to crab, and the left rear suspension. Oops-a-daisy. Well, that's all a part of learning for Luca Badoer, and it's a shame. The young man did a very good job. He raced very, very well in the opening laps, ahead of many more people and more competitive cars than he has.
On the infield section, Damon Hill right with Alain Prost, and Prost cannot make the smallest of mistakes because Damon Hill is there ready to pounce.
But this is where Damon lost ground on the former lap, the previous lap. As we see Alain Prost fighting with John Alesi. Now this is not for the Leos. The hand up out of the cockpit. What are you doing to me?
Half a second, but the gap is a little bit more, 0.6 of a second after 31 laps. Martin Brundle is still in third place, Ayrton Senna in fourth, Michael Schumacher in fifth, and I think Eddie Jordan is sitting somewhere in the back of his motorhome, his fingers crossed, his eyes closed, fingers in his ears. He doesn't want to know because his boy Rubens Barrichello is in sixth place and is gonna have that vital point if he stays there. But that's the situation here at Magny-Cours. We'll be back after these short messages here on Eurosport.
I think one has to be very aware of the fact that the Williams team have an obligation to many quarters. It's not simply just the drivers. They have an obligation to the sponsors, to the engine suppliers, etc. And there we've got a hand there. That looks like a problem there for... That's Senna. That's Senna with a problem.
Yeah, I don't think he's saying, look at my dirty glove, because he was slowing right down there. Ayrton Senna in fourth position behind Brundle, in which case, now there is the Brazilian, and he's coming up behind Derek Warwick, forcing his way through. Oh, he looks okay. Maybe he was signalling to another driver and we really didn't know because we were so close up on him. But we're on lap 33 now in this 72-lap French Grand Prix. So coming up towards half distance with Prost and Hill fighting for the lead, and they are fighting. And Damon Hill's fastest lap of 1 minute 20.68 still remains, which makes me feel that they're well off their fastest pace because they're lapping now much slower than that speed. So Prost leads, Hill in second position, and now with third position Martin Brundle. He's 35 seconds behind the leaders. Senna in fourth position, and Brundle is staving off the Brazilian and showing every sign of finishing third in France for the second year in succession. On lap 33, Michael Schumacher is 2 seconds behind Senna. There's the proof. There is Senna. There is Schumacher. They have both lapped the two footwork cars of Derek Warwick and Aguri Suzuki, who are battling for 15th position. Look at them. Warwick on the left, coming towards us now, behind Michael Schumacher, who has lapped him, and Warwick's Japanese teammate Aguri Suzuki, the ex-Formula 3000 champion of Japan, is trying to displace his teammate and take 15th position, and he's not succeeding.
Welcome back here on Eurosport. We're at Magny-Cours, and Alain Prost has now 0.6 of a second over Damon Hill, still in second place. But the fight behind there is quite good, because Martin Brundle has about 3 seconds over Ayrton Senna, who has about the same margin over Michael Schumacher, but it's all closing up. They're going past the pits now. Martin Brundle, Ayrton Senna, and now Michael Schumacher.
Well, talking to Martin Brundle this morning, he felt that the best he could hope for was to hang in behind the two Williams Renaults, but he felt that as the race progressed and as his passively sprung Ligier Renault started to lose fuel, the ride height does alter, that affects the downforce, and he was very concerned about Ayrton Senna in his McLaren and Michael Schumacher in his Benetton Ford, because those cars have got active ride and they are much more able to get consistent aerodynamic performance between full tanks, mid tanks and empty tanks, and that is in effect what we are seeing right now. The gap between Martin Brundle and Ayrton Senna on the 34th lap was only 1.4 seconds. You can see the gap here as we look at Martin Brundle, who now has got a little advantage. He's put Thierry Boutsen in his Jordan between himself and Senna, and Martin a great race driver, and he understands how to use traffic. Now he's got Philippe Alliot. He will try and place Alliot's LaRousse Lamborghini between himself and Ayrton Senna as soon as possible. It'll not happen until they come on to the pit straight, but just watch the power difference between the Lamborghini V12 and the Renault V10. Can Martin Brundle outdrag or not before he comes into Estoril corner?
Well, the gap is growing. It's now 0.7 of a second between Alain Prost and Damon Hill. And whoa, that Ligier was very quick into the Estoril corner. Now he's into the toe, and he will go past Philippe Alliot very easy round the outside on the way to the Adelaide hairpin. Then he's got to outbrake the LaRousse with the Lamborghini engine, and he's on his way to Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari.
Well, Senna again taking the opportunity to dive down the inside. Philippe Alliot careful with his mirrors. Well done, Philippe Alliot. He was quite easily have just pulled across and blocked Senna, but he was aware of Senna coming through. Senna, of course, the great, let's say, bully on the racetrack, because he uses that red and white McLaren nose to signal his intentions. There's no question of hesitation. Once you see that nose, he knows he's got you and he's on his way through.
Riding with Ayrton Senna, and whoop, trying to go past former teammate Gerhard Berger there on the entry of Imola.
Well, Alain Prost, quickest lap so far, 1 minute 20.533. Damon Hill's lap, 1 minute 20.542. So literally a handkerchief covering the lap times of these two Williams Renault's driver. And I just wonder now, is this the pattern the race is going to follow until the end of the 72nd lap? But Prost still having a little look at his mirrors. He's maybe not entirely sure if Damon Hill is acquiescing this afternoon, or is he going to have a battle on his hands with his young teammate?
Well, I hope he does. When we cross the line, we're in the halfway point of this French Grand Prix. The cars are locked together, Alain Prost and Damon Hill. And don't forget, Damon running that ABS system on his car for the first time in a race, and Alain Prost isn't. Actually, Alain Prost is in the spare car.
Well, this is the exit of Estoril, 5th gear. And we mentioned earlier in the program a corner that's caused a great deal of difficulty for many of the teams and drivers. The ones that probably suffer least. And now just under braking. That's a slightly artificial picture, because of course Alain Prost is on the brakes earlier and therefore slowing down more quickly. Once they accelerate out of the corner, that gap reopens. But I wonder how much of an advantage ABS braking is in real terms. Certainly it is meant to prevent a wheel lock-up situation, but whether it gives you any further advantage in terms of being able to go deeper or not. We know in other forms of racing, and in particular in Germany in their touring car championship, there is a big advantage in ABS over a non-ABS car. But with the amount of downforce these cars generate, it's difficult, I would say. I think we need Patrick Head in here to give us, in fact, the real facts and figures of the differences of performance.
Well, actually, John, it's funny because on that replay we saw Damon locking his inside wheel. So now he did say last night he could switch the ABS off. Now maybe he's done that. He
may well have done that, and again, ABS, of course, takes away a small percentage of feel. It's not a comfortable thing if you're not certain of what the brake pedal is going to do under extremis, which is what, of course, Damon is doing at the end of this straight. He's braking at his own personal limit. It may be a different limit to that of the car, but that's his limit, and he might find that the information and feel that his foot gives him without ABS is a better signal, a better indicator to what the front wheels and the rear wheels are doing under severe braking.
Can we see a replay of Ayrton Senna and Gerhard Berger? Oh, sorry, it's Michael Andretti and Gerhard Berger then. Well, I don't know what they were doing, but there was a replay of something anyway. And Damon Hill is getting a little closer yet again. Now, John, it's all right lead in the first 20-odd laps. It's all right following Alain Prost, but is Damon actually going to attack Alain Prost and take that lead away from the Frenchman? I mean, he's quick enough.
He certainly is quick enough, and the place that I feel he's got the potential to do it is in fact at the end of the straight into the Adelaide hairpin, because I suspect that Damon is a late breaker. Alain Prost, really throughout his Grand Prix career, has not been one of those drivers who specialises in the last minute nailing the pedal to the floor. I suspect that Damon Hill, coming through the junior formulas and coming out of a junior formula more recent than Prost, has got that more aggressive nature in his driving style at this stage of his career.
Also, Damon in a perfect position just in case they're going to come up to traffic. And the difference in time is not that big as it used to be. Both Williams Renaults are running in the 1:21 second bracket at the moment, while Eric Comas is running in the 1:22s, and he's in 7th position. So everybody in between those, look, Martin Brundle's in the 1:21s, Michael Schumacher is into the 1:21s, and Ayrton Senna is the odd one out. Now, the last of the unlapped runners is Rubens Barrichello in 6th position, and it's, well, let's have a look what he's doing at the moment. But Barrichello driving a very good race up till lap 38 out of 72, so we're past the halfway mark.
And here's the other principal battle taking place at Manicourt, and it's Martin Brundle getting further pressure from his former Formula 3 protagonist Ayrton Senna. And Senna's gradually eating into that 3rd place position that Martin currently is holding, in fact has held since the flag or the red light went to green. And Senna relentless in his pursuit, as is Michael Schumacher. Schumacher some 2 seconds behind Senna in 5th place, and really anybody who would have that pressure behind them must really suffer a great deal. And the temptation, of course, is when you're under pressure like this, is to start looking in your mirrors continually. And once you do that, once a driver starts showing that signal of concern, it gives Ayrton Senna and it gives Michael Schumacher belief that they've actually got their man, and then they really start to hunt him down.
Brundle and Senna running identical times at the moment. There's a 10th between them. Michael Schumacher is a little bit slower on this lap, while the leaders are just about to complete another lap. We're watching Michael Schumacher in 5th position. Of course, he won his first Grand Prix last year in Spa, a magnificent drive, and he said himself, he said, we've had some bad luck this year so far. We had some mechanical failures, and he said we had some driver errors as well.
But Allard, what they've also had for the first time is real competition from a team with an engine, in fact not even an identical engine, an engine of a lesser performance than Benetton have, and that for me has been the crucial factor, and that I think is what's created some of the errors, both driving and mechanical, we've seen from Benetton this year. In 1992 there was no one with a Ford engine to challenge them. They were the giant killers, let's say, of Formula One.
Michael Andretti, who said he was chipping away at the times earlier on, and the car was getting better and better. He said, well, he's now in 8th position, John, and he's gaining on Eric Comas, who is in 7th. So Michael Andretti keeps his word, going better and better indeed.
I'm sure Michael Andretti will really look forward to finishing a Grand Prix. And of course 1 week away is Silverstone, so I'm delighted to say that Michael is not returning to the States. He will come to England, and I'm sure that his performance will benefit greatly as a result of not having yet another transatlantic two-way trip.
Alain Prost leads Damon Hill after 41 laps out of 72 here in Magny-Cours, France, with a 43rd French Grand Prix. Brundle, Senna, Schumacher and Barrichello, that is the rest of the top 6, and we'll be back after these very short messages here on Eurosport when Alain Prost just puts in a new fastest lap.
He has been going magnificently. Your teammate Martin Brundle is holding 3rd place as I talk to you, ahead of Senna and Schumacher. Do you have any handling power or other reservations about his ability to stay where he is?
No, I'm very glad he's running up there 3rd still, and I hope he can get to the end of the race because the team deserve it. They've done a fantastic job.
Tell us a little about it, Mark, because you're an Englishman in France these days, and there was a lot of criticism about you and Martin being appointed to drive two very French cars in a very French team. What's it like working from Magny-Cours?
It's good fun. I mean, the team are fantastic. Obviously, there is a little bit of media attention because two Brits in the French team. But we're doing the best we can, and I think they're appreciating it. So, you know, whatever the media say, the team are happy, and that's the main thing.
Et parlez-vous français maintenant?
No.
Right, Jonathan.
Mark, it seemed that in those first few laps you were gradually slipping back from Martin. I thought you probably had some kind of problem to account for it, because normally you are so incredibly evenly matched. What was going on there?
Well, basically, Jonathan, we've been struggling with rear caliper temperatures, and the rear calipers on the brakes gone up to a very high temperature, and that was causing me knock off on the brake pedal. It was very soft. On the quick corners, you probably see I could maintain the gap, but on the slow stuff, I was very uneven into the braking areas, and that was causing me to slow up.
Very hard luck indeed.
Mark, thank you very much. Better luck next time at the British Grand Prix at Silverstone in 1 week's time. The Ligier should go well there, as the Williams-Renaults are going well here, as you can see. Lap 43 now, out of 72. Alain Prost continues to lead 0. Damon Hill there, and it's now 1.8 seconds. Prost is putting the hammer down a bit. He's just lapped 0.7 of a second faster than Damon Hill. Both the Ligiers remain faster than everything else on the circuit. In third position, Martin Brundle is now 44 seconds behind the flying Williams, and he's only 1 second ahead of Ayrton Senna, who is only 1 second ahead of Schumacher. So it may be not exactly processional, but very convincing for the lead. But there's the battle.
Welcome back here on Eurosport. We're watching Ayrton Senna, who is currently in 4th position during lap 43 out of 72, and another tyre stop for Gerhard Berger coming out of the pits, and that's his second stop of the weekend, of this race, sorry.
Well, I think that's a symptom of Gerhard Berger's year, let alone his weekend here in France. And we think he's the first man to have been in for a second set of tyres. And really, it's, I'm sure, just sheer frustration for Berger. Nothing has really gone right for him at all in 1993. He hoped that his return to Ferrari would signal a return to his winning ways. He spent 3 years at the McLaren University of Grand Prix Racing, and he hoped that all that information and knowledge and his diploma for his efforts would help him re-establish himself as a consistent winning Grand Prix driver. Well, that isn't the case, and certainly Jean Alesi has consistently outshone him throughout the year.
John, what I wonder is, I know Jean Alesi, or sorry, Gerhard Berger is hard on tyres. I know he was likely to make 2 stops anyway, but does this mean that we're going to see more people making another tyre stop, although there are only 29 laps to go?
I think that question will only be answered by the stopwatch, and if your team calculate that the time that you may start to lose again is greater than what will be lost by coming into the pits, then you better come into the pits and have a second tyre stop. It's a simple mathematical calculation, and we're watching the Williams team. They're running in the middle to high 1 minute 20s, and that's still about a second quicker than anybody else is doing. But as far as people like Ayrton Senna, who's pushing very, very hard in 4th place to take 3rd away from Martin Brundle, well, I would think they're going to really judge their pace against the pace of Martin Brundle.
Well, there's another interesting battle developing while we're still watching that battle with Derek Warwick and Aguri Suzuki. Thierry Boutsen right in front of those. But also Boutsen's teammate Barrichello is being chased by Eric Comas. Although Comas is 10 seconds behind the young Brazilian, he is gaining around a second a lap. Well, with 29 laps to go, there is still plenty of room for battle for that last and vital point.
Well, Andrea de Cesaris finding himself being crowded by Alain Prost and Damon Hill as they come up to complete their 45th lap, and then once again here's an opportunity, this time for Damon Hill to take the lead away from Alain Prost, as we've got 2 battling footwork Mugens ahead of them, and that really is a battle royal going on in that footwork team. And rumours about Derek Warwick's situation with the team and the progress he's making, and the fact that Aguri Suzuki in the last couple of Grand Prix appearing to find himself being more competitive, probably is really being illustrated very graphically here, midpoint of this French Grand Prix.
Oh, Guri Suzuki not letting Alain Prost pass, and that was very close indeed. And instantly Damon Hill is there to pounce should Alain Prost hit any problems at all. Blue flags being waved, but that, I think, was not look in your mirrors, Suzuki.
Well, remember what happened in Imola when Carl Wendlinger came up to lap Guri Suzuki, and in fact on a damp track that was drying, Carl Wendlinger got trapped. And we see Michael Schumacher now. He's the second of the principal leaders into the pits for his second set of tyres. And Schumacher right now, he will have to be on Bs regardless of what that second set was. He will be on Bs. He only had 2 sets of As. But Guri Suzuki has had race leader Alain Prost behind him now for almost a lap. Now I'm quite sure that should Prost struggle to get past Suzuki, that we will see very clearly indeed a flag being waved at Suzuki to come in for a stop-go penalty, because after Imola there were lots of discontent about the way that Suzuki Wendlinger incident was handled, and really now Alain Prost should be able to pull out and power past Suzuki, but he's not making it easy for Prost.
And of course Suzuki being powered by that Mugen V10 engine, and that is still a very strong engine indeed.
Well, Suzuki did allow both the Williams to go through, but certainly Damon Hill must have had his heart pounding up around about 200 beats for that second or so. I wondered if he thought Suzuki may not have seen him, or may not decided just to give him the road.
Well, we're watching the battle for the lead between Alain Prost and Damon Hill, trying to find a way past Derek Warwick. Eric Gomez is closing in still on Barrichello, but also Ayrton Senna is closing in on Martin Brundle. The gap is now down to half a second. So basically, Brundle and Senna, when we see them, if we see them, they're running basically nose to tail.
Well, last year at Silverstone there was an almighty battle race long between Ayrton Senna and Martin Brundle, and well, almost 1 year on the situation's reversed. But I think for Ayrton Senna, he has a problem in that while he may be quicker on a lap on the parts of the circuit where passing is possible, Martin Brundle will have the power advantage.
Alain Prost passing Derek Warwick very easy on the straight, and I'm sure Damon Hill will have no problem passing Derek Warwick as well, which is what he's doing here. Warwick running in 14th position, now 2 laps down on the race leader. Well, we're still watching Damon Hill. I would like to see some pictures of that battle, and there is Martin Brundle getting into the pits for his second tyre stop of the weekend. Is this going to be a good stop? Cleaning the visor. He's out on scrub tyres. Good stop.
That's a great stop from the Ligier team, and Martin is back out. Now he has certainly lost his 3rd place, he's lost his 4th place, he is out in 5th place, but he has got fresh tyres, and we will have to wait and see as Michael Schumacher on his first flying lap on that second set of fresh tyres. Well, there it is, 1 minute 19.256, and I wonder now, are the Williams twins coming in, or what is Ayrton Senna going to do?
Well, John, if I was Damon Hill now, I would go and get a new set of tyres. Because if the difference is that big, if Michael Schumacher can lap that much quicker, then it could be worth have a gamble, go in and get a new set of tyres, while Boutsen is looking into his mirrors and letting both Williams Renault pass. Of course, Boutsen used to drive for this team when they had the Renault RS1 engine.
Well, we're waiting for the leaders to come round to complete their 49th lap and all the positions to be finally sorted out. It is still Prost, Hill, Senna.
Jean Alesi is retiring from this Grand Prix, going very slowly indeed. There he's going into the pits.
Well, I think the man really looking in trouble right now is Ayrton Senna. because he has only got a 12-second advantage over Michael Schumacher, and Schumacher is lapping over a second faster. As we said that, Jean Alesi pulls into the pits to retire from this French Grand Prix, and all credit to Alesi. He has literally driven the wheels off his Ferrari. I'm sure that thing was running up near to 15,000 RPM, and that is just another chapter for Jean Alesi of disappointment.
Well, they're going to call Riccardo Patrese in, but we're running with Alain Prost, who has not got any tear-offs left on his visor. We can see him cleaning the visor with his hand, and that is not really what you want to do, John, because if there's oil on it, you only make it worse, really, isn't it?
I think you're right, Arnaud, yes.
The gap between those two is 0.7 of a second, and it is been the same for the last 10 laps or so, and I think both John and I are waiting for which Williams is going to come into the pits first. Is it going to be Damon Hill, or is it going to be Alain Prost? While Ayrton Senna is now in third, 2 seconds lap slower than Michael Schumacher, and Martin Brundle is doing roughly the same lap times than Schumacher, but Schumacher must have had a mega stop, John, because after the stops, Schumacher is now in front of Brundle.
Well, Schumacher and Brundle are the quickest men on the circuit, and I think Ayrton Senna's lead, some 10 seconds now, is evaporating very, very quickly. And I would have thought that the McLaren team, remember we're on lap 50, and as Riccardo Patrese just about makes enough room for Senna to get through, I would have thought the McLaren team must seriously consider bringing Senna in before very much longer, because inevitably Michael Schumacher will catch up. Now, of course, he's got the benefit of his tyres when they are fresh. After about 5 or 6 laps, that speed he is currently displaying will taper away. So it's a very important calculation that the McLaren team right now have to make. The McLaren tyres on Senna's car certainly are much, much more stable. Once the tyre has run, we saw Patrese just diving into the pits as Senna came onto the pit straight. But once Schumacher's tyres have been out for 5 or 6 laps, the edge of speed levels out, and he will then drop back to something in and around about the middle 1 minute 20s. And a great stop from Riccardo Patrese. Patrese, as he came into the pits in 10th place. Really another unhappy weekend for Riccardo Patrese. Senna coming down into Adelaide Hairpin, got Christian Fittipaldi ahead of him, and that will be, I hope, no problem from his fellow countrymen.
While after 50 laps, Alain Prost leads Damon Hill by half a second. We're waiting for a Williams pit stop, really, here in Magny-Cours. And in third place, it is still Ayrton Senna, who is also on the verge of making a pit stop. We'll be back after the break.
Haas is 7th, Andretti is 8th, Fittipaldi is 9th, Patrese is 10th, Alliot is 11th. 12th and 2 laps down is Thierry Boutsen. Derek Warwick is in 13th place. There are still 17 competitors left in the race. Michael Schumacher is now the fastest lapper of the French Grand Prix. 1 minute 19.256, and that compares with Nigel Mansell's lap record of 1 minute 17.070. So he's still 2.2 seconds off lap record speed. You watch Ayrton Senna.
Yes, so far this year we seem to have been deprived the potentially tremendous battle between Senna and Schumacher, both with the Ford engine towards the end of the races when one or the other has had a problem. But let's just hope here that at Magny-Cours, with Senna in third place, Schumacher just 5.5 seconds behind, but lapping faster, we can see the sort of battles that really Formula One should be able to produce for us, with drivers of the calibre of Senna and Schumacher as well. Brundle, meanwhile, is not far behind. He's just 4 seconds behind Schumacher, and so he could be joining the fray too, particularly if Senna and Schumacher start slowing themselves down. But of course, really, this race, it's about the Williams team at the front end, and it has to be said that this is by far and away Damon's best ever race. He's with lap 52, we're at 2/3 distance, and Damon is driving extraordinarily well. Even if Prost does have the potential here to win the race. In terms of team orders, the best thing that Damon can do is to be right in his wake the whole way through, and he's doing that very well so far. And it's a McLaren, and it's Andretti again. Andretti, in fact, going very well indeed. He was in 8th place. Just 3 seconds behind Comas, also running very well in the Larousse. That's going to drop him back a little bit, but he's obviously on for a top 10 finish there quite safely.
Yes, going back to what you were saying about Damon Hill, there have been 1 or 2 misguided people who have been criticising Damon for allegedly.
Welcome back here on Eurosport. This is Ayrton Senna on lap 53, and Alain Prost still leads Damon Hill, Senna, Schumacher, Brundle and Barrichello. That is the situation, and well, both Williams-Renault have got a huge lead over everybody else. 44 seconds is the lead Damon Hill has over Ayrton Senna, but Senna is not that far in front of Michael Schumacher anymore, John.
Not at all. After Schumacher made his second stop for tyres, he's just taken lumps out of Ayrton Senna's 3rd place. And I must say I am very surprised that the McLaren team have not taken the option of bringing Senna in, fitting him up with fresh rubber, because, well, we're on lap 54 of 72, and I have to say that Schumacher, in the next 3 laps, is going to be right on the gearbox of Senna. And at that stage, in my mind, the advantage that Senna might have enjoyed had he stopped some 5 or 6 laps earlier would have gone.
While Ayrton Senna crosses the line just in front of teammates Michael Andretti, who is on fresh rubber, so that's interesting to see how those times compare. Alain Prost is lapping exactly the same speed as Damon Hill at the moment, and good news for Barrichello fans, because Eric Comas is not coming any closer anymore.
Well, there are our leading pair, Alain Prost and Damon Hill. And yet again, more traffic with Philippe Alliot coming into play, and well, I suspect now in reality that this leading duo have decided that the positions on the track are as they will be for the remaining part of this race. And you were talking about a pit stop a little earlier, Allard, for the Williams drivers. They've got such an advantage over a 3rd place man. There's really no need for them to make a pit stop, even though they're lapping slower than Michael Schumacher is, or for that matter Martin Brundle. But their advantage is some 40-odd seconds, and it's not a question of Damon Hill racing Alain Prost for the World Championship. It's a question of the 2 Williams drivers coming 1st and 2nd.
Especially today in front of 7,500 Renault guests. Then of course Frank Williams always says, like, well, it's the Constructors' Championship that I want to win.
And if along the way you pick up a Drivers' World Crown, then that's an extra bonus.
In the background we saw Michael Schumacher getting closer to Ayrton Senna. He is reeling Senna in about 1.2 seconds a lap.
But interestingly is Michael Andretti, who now is riding shotgun to Ayrton Senna, and Michael Andretti's running 1 minute 20.708, and that's just a little under a second slower than Michael Andretti, and that's a situation that really Schumacher will not want to have to cope with. He will want to get on terms as quickly as possible as he can with 3rd place man Senna, as Andrea de Cesaris really not allowing Senna the advantage of getting through earlier on this lap. Senna now going down the inside, has Andrea given him room. Michael Andretti took the opportunity to dive through as well, and now Schumacher is the one that's got to do all the bravery down into the final chicane, and he's done it. But Michael Andretti is between him and the man he is after, Ayrton Senna.
Well, is Michael Andretti going to overtake Ayrton Senna again, John? That's, I think, the big question. Schumacher 20.3 on that last lap, still easily the fastest man on the circuit. And again, he did set fastest lap earlier on.
Well, Schumacher is going to try and push very hard out of the Estoril corner and pick up the toe of Michael Andretti. And this, as you see coming down, this is a recording coming into the chicane. Schumacher squeezes his way past Andrea de Cesaris. Senna goes right, bump, hit the curb, and then into the slowest corner, or I would think almost the slowest corner, certainly this Lycée corner, this tight right-hand hairpin bend that leads on to the start-finish straight. And all the beauty of a Grand Prix car in slow motion.
The gap is a second and a half in between this man, Alain Prost, and the man following him. There he is, Damon Hill, running in the mid 1 minute 20 second bracket. And in third place, we're waiting for him, is Ayrton Senna. And Senna is currently a long way behind. And suddenly, yes, John, Eric Comas is gaining hand over fist over Rubens Barrichello.
Well, the gap went from about 9 seconds a couple of laps ago down to just over 5.5 seconds, and well, that could be just traffic. It's not easy to know always when the cameras are following the lead cars what is happening further down the field with the battles. But the last lap of Barrichello was 1.4 seconds slower than the chasing Eric Comas, and that really indicates to me that traffic came into play. But more interestingly now is that Michael Schumacher is only 0.6 of a second behind Ayrton Senna, and this is going to be, for me, the final icing on the cake of a very interesting French Grand Prix, one in which we saw Damon Hill lead from his pole position, only really, I think, to lose the lead of the Grand Prix with a slightly poorer tyre stop to that of his teammate Alain Prost. Also, of course, Damon very unlucky, because Michael Andretti just edged into the exit lane of the pits ahead of him, and to crown it all, Carl Wendlinger sort of meandered into the pit lane at the exit, and I'm sure Damon's expression over the pits to car radio was colourful, I think, in the extreme.
The gap back down to 0.7 of a second. Damon Hill 20.6, so he's gaining again a little bit. And there's a man who was in third place for a very long time indeed. Martin Brundle, who's dropped down to fifth, is 6 seconds behind Ayrton Senna and Michael Schumacher. And Ayrton Senna has speeded up, John.
Well, never ever dismiss Ayrton Senna. He is, I think, the greatest Grand Prix driver currently in Formula One. And he is the only, well, I was going to say the only one of the leading group. Of course, Prost and Hill have not had pit stops either for a second set. And I am critical of the strategy of both Ayrton Senna and of the McLaren team. But nonetheless, Ayrton Senna somehow or other manages to drag out 3 or 4 tenths on a lap when it really matters, and that's usually under pressure.
Martin Brundle, confident before the start. He said, we know how slippery it gets here during the afternoon. Well, Mark Blundell, who had a problem and retired, Martin has dropped down to 5th position. The gap between 6th and 7th at the moment is 5.8 seconds, but interestingly behind them, Eric Comas, and Barrichello, is the man who crosses the line now, and that is Michael Andretti, who is 2 seconds lap faster than Eric Comas.
Well, that's going to be a battle for the last of the point scoring positions at 6th place, because Andretti is running 2 seconds quicker than Comas and Rubens Barrichello, and by our calculations that's going to make a very interesting little brew up in the closing laps. And here we have the battle now for 3rd place, and Michael Schumacher will really just wait until he reaches that point in the circuit where he sees his advantage to take, well, at least attempt deposing Senna from 3rd place. Now that's not going to be easy, because Senna will fight to the last fraction of an inch for position, and Michael Schumacher knows that.
Schumacher and Senna. Schumacher has been consistently quicker down the straight, so he should try maybe and get into the toe, John, and outbrake him at the Adelaide hairpin.
Yeah, I mean, if it was as easy as that, I think we would have seen it happen even earlier. But Ayrton Senna will make full use of his McLaren, and well, he made a little error as he came through the chicane. He clipped the curb on the inside, and it's little misjudgments like that that lose you thousandths of seconds, then hundredths, then tenths. But it's through here that Schumacher's got to do his best work. He's got to get himself sufficiently close to Senna to get a run off the corner, but not too close that he loses front end downforce and himself then is disadvantaged as a consequence.
Looking back from one of the McLarens, and I think actually it is Ayrton Senna's car. We're going to take a short break here on Eurosport while Alain Prost leads Damon Hill by just over half a second, and then it's Senna and Schumacher. That's the battle we're watching, and we're going to continue to watch it after the break. We'll be back soon.
It's on over the Ford engines. They're very evenly matched in terms of systems, and I was very interested to see yesterday that Michael Schumacher has got on his steering wheel a special button which enables him to trim the ride height of his car. When he needs more downforce, he can get it. When he needs less downforce, he can similarly get it by pressing that button. And Senna will undoubtedly have the same sort of facility. They're coming down to the Lycée now to complete another lap. This will be the end of their 61st lap. Prost and Hill have already gone through. Still only 7/10 of a second between them. Looking forwards and backwards on Senna's car now, and that's no mean achievement. Forwards at the top, and where is Schumacher? Look at the bottom half of your picture, and you can see him between the two elements of Ayrton Senna's rear wing. And they're now doing 190 miles an hour as they go round Golf Corner. Michael Andretti is keeping them both in sight. He's in 8th place, a lap behind them. But Schumacher's going to have all his time cut out to get past Ayrton Senna. His engine may have marginally more horsepower, although there's a lot of argument about that, because the cars use different makes of fuel. They have different engine systems. One has got the tag system, and that is the Ayrton Senna McLaren, and we're back again with the leaders, with Alain Prost on his 62nd lap now, getting towards the closing stages of the French Grand Prix of 1993. And off goes the Benetton now. Is it Patrese, or it's Patrese? Riccardo Patrese has got it all wrong. He's wiped off the front wing of the Benetton, so that's another certain retirement. He was trying to get inside Christian Fittipaldi's Minardi Ford. He runs wide and clobbers the back of the car, does he? Well, he hasn't done it yet. Oh my goodness! He mounts the Minardi, and well, Jonathan, you know about this. What on earth happened?
Well, it seems pretty extraordinary. Clearly we had contact there. It looked perhaps as though the Minardi missed a gear and momentarily slowed, and that let the Benetton ride up the back of the Minardi. But it looked pretty odd. It looked almost as if Patrese pushed him, which I can't believe that was the case. So I would suspect a missed gear from the Minardi.
From Christian Fittipaldi. Here's a replay. Well, let's see. Patrese pulling out to the right to try and go through. And obviously there was a diminution in the differential of the speed.
And Patrese and Fittipaldi fighting for position, and there you saw an attack on the rear of Fittipaldi's Minardi by Patrese. Now that may have been Fittipaldi missing a gear change, or just feeling the pressure and making an error, or it may have just been simply bad driving on the part of Patrese. The outcome was that the car lost the entire front wing section, and he had to come into the pits quite slowly, because when you lose that front wing, you've virtually got no steering effort whatsoever.
12 seconds for a new nose cone. It's not bad though, John, is it?
A very, very good effort indeed by the Benetton team, and now Patrese being a right pain for Thierry Boutsen.
Well, let's have a little look at that little incident again at the Adelaide hairpin.
There we see the two cars exiting. Now, does Fittipaldi's car momentarily sort of slow down, or is it just Patrese's a misjudgment? If that's a misjudgment, that's a fairly fundamental one. And maybe that is a case for glasses, because I have to say, there's no way a driver of that experience should find himself in a situation. I would like to think that that was a missed gear or something with Fittipaldi that caused that incident.
The gap between Damon Hill and Alain Prost is 0.8 of a second. They're not lapping very fast anymore in the 1:22, 1:23 second bracket. There we see the gap, and it's close again to 0.6 of a second. Well, it's been like that for the last 20 laps. But behind those two, there's a battle royal going on between Michael Schumacher and Ayrton Senna. And I like to see that, actually.
Well, behind that there's a third battle going on. That's between Rubens Barrichello, Eric Comas, and the fastest of the three, Michael Andretti, and he is running approximately 2 seconds a lap quicker than Barrichello and Comas. And again, by our calculations, well, there we see 9 laps to the end. By our calculations, if Michael Andretti can find a way past Comas, which is no easy thing, I must say, he may well put a last lap challenge on Ruben Barrichello's 6th place. Great finale to this French Grand Prix.
There we see Eric Comas. Michael Schumacher has passed Ayrton Senna. Michael Schumacher is now in 3rd place in the French Grand Prix. There, very late braking from, and Ayrton Senna has got problems. He has lost all grip, I reckon.
Well, I think he had problems with grip, but he just tried to brake so late. And of course, he's getting a lot of pressure from teammate Michael Andretti. The pair of them now running nose to tail, and it is Andretti, in fact, who is the marginally, in fact, more than that, over a second a lap quicker than his illustrious teammate. And that is the price Ayrton Senna has paid for not having a tyre stop. And look at Schumacher locking up under braking in an effort to put himself ahead of Eric Comas. Now Ayrton Senna, now he has probably got a lot less grip. Remember, he's only had 1 tyre stop. Here we see it again. Comas currently running in 7th and hounding down Rubens Barrichello in 6th. Here's the new 3rd place man trying to get ahead of Comas as quickly as possible. Well, there we see the view, and this is from Ayrton Senna's car, and that is the back of Eric Comas's Lamborghini. Larus and Michael Andretti pushing for the first time ever in a Grand Prix Ayrton Senna.
Well, then Ayrton Senna's got Martin Brundle now right behind him, and if he's not careful, he's going to lose 4th place to the Englishman as well. There we see the running order, but it is Martin Brundle who is catching Ayrton Senna, and that is with 7 laps to go when we cross start finish. Well, I think we could be in for a grand finale. Derek Warwick, incidentally, still in 13th place, half a second in front of teammate Aguri Suzuki. The end of lap 65, the gap between the two teammates is 0.7 of a second.
The gap between Michael Andretti and Eric Comas is only a second, but it's up to 6 seconds now between Comas and Barrichello. So really, Comas is the man who's really exhausted the potential that he had in this Grand Prix. Michael Andretti, I'm sure, by the end of this 66th lap, will be ahead. The question is, has he got the time and the speed to carry himself up to that 6th place, currently being held and vitally being held by Rubens Barrichello.
Difference between Michael Schumacher and the leaders is 32 seconds. Now he is, let's say, 2.5 seconds a lap faster, but it's nowhere near enough to challenge Alain Prost or Damon Hill for that matter. The only thing we may expect is a little charge from Damon Hill, and there Riccardo Patrese locking up. He must be fuming inside that cockpit.
Yes, that's frustration, and I feel we should give the benefit of the doubt to Patrese in that incident with Christian Fittipaldi, but certainly he was the loser and the one that had to come slowly back into the pits. Well, Alain Prost just waiting patiently before he finds his way past Andrea de Cesaris yet again, and Damon Hill shadowing him every move on the track. And can Prost, he's made it down the inside. Poor Damon Hill had to lift off in a big way. Well, now Damon's able, though, in fact, of losing time initially, he may well have been able to accelerate earlier and therefore maintain and pick up speed on the exit of Estoril. You know, sometimes what appears to be a disadvantage actually works for you, and that's one of those instances. It would appear that Prost got the break, but in fact, well, we see at the end of the day, both drivers still within half a second of each other.
Alain Prost and Damon Hill leading, then it's Michael Schumacher, another 2 seconds closer yet again, and there an unhappy Ayrton Senna waving to, I think, Eric Comas, who is now passed by Michael Andretti. So Michael Andretti in 7th position on a charge, 6 laps to go, sorry. And is he gonna pass Rubens Barrichello? That was the difference. There is Barrichello in 6th position, a vital position for the Jordan team.
And really, Allard, the worst thing could happen for the Jordan team is they've got the two footworks ahead of them. Suzuki and Derek Warwick are battling away. Michael Andretti has a clear road up to Rubens Barrichello. Or he had a clear road, there's a car between them in fact. But it's easier for Andretti because he has the fresh tyres. He has got his momentum built up, he's got the speed. And, well, a nail-biting moment for both teams, McLaren and Jordan. But of course, for the Jordan team, this 1 point will be vital. It's the lifeline between financial support for the second part of the year in terms of travel and bonus monies, or nothing.
Well, it would be the very first point for Rubens Barrichello, and I'm sure Barrichello will fight for that point. Now, what's the lap times doing? 2 seconds a lap. With 5 laps to go, he could be in trouble.
The interesting thing is, in fact, that Ayrton Senna is ahead on the road, literally, of Michael Andretti. So Andretti is going to have to find a way past his own teammate to get to Rubens Barrichello. And I'm not quite sure whether Senna's prepared to move over and allow Michael Andretti to do so. Now, that's a team call. That's something that the team manager, Ron Dennis, or the actual managers of Senna's car and Andretti's car should work out between the two of them. Senna, in reality, has lost any chance of getting back into third place. He's now 6.3 seconds behind Schumacher, but he could help his own team and his own teammate by letting Andretti get through.
68 laps completed. 4 laps to go during this 43rd French Grand Prix, and Damon Hill shadows Alain Prost all the way. Whatever Prost does, Damon Hill does it as well. Now, behind those, it's Michael Schumacher. Let's see what the gap is between these two and the German, who is crossing start-finish now. 27.9 seconds. And then we have Rubens Barrichello, and the gap between him and Michael Andretti. Oh, it's closing again.
But Michael Andretti is still behind Senna. And before he can get to Barrichello, he's got to get past Senna. Now, maybe the team are thinking, well, we'll use Senna to drag Michael Andretti along. But in fact, the opposite is true. It is Michael Andretti who's pushing Senna, because Andretti is currently the quicker, well, he was until this last lap, the quicker by a significant amount of the two McLarens.
John, Damon Hill's going to finish second in a Grand Prix where he basically pushed Alain Prost all the way. He started from pole position, while we see a replay of Ayrton Senna passing Derek Warwick. The man must have had so much more confidence after this Grand Prix.
And there's the exit panel, the access panel to the front suspension on Warwick's footwork just blowing up. We saw that in slow motion replay, and well, there's nothing to worry about that. It is only there just to give the mechanics and the engineers access to the front, well, in this particular case, in the footwork, the active suspension system, which in fact belongs in origin to McLaren. But that's just a panel that is there, held on by a little clip fastener. But here's our race leader, Alain Prost, on his 70th lap. Damon Hill sitting behind in second place, and in reality, this is how the results will stand out. There is no possibility in my mind of Damon Hill mounting a last lap challenge to Prost. This is the dream result for the Renault team here in France. 1 week's time we're at Silverstone. That is Damon Hill's turf. I wonder, will Alain Prost repay the compliment to Damon that he's received today?
Well, I mean, Damon is much more confident anyway.
Yes, he is. But, you know, situations sometimes have to be thought about from the team position. Alain Prost on course to scoring 10 points. Ayrton Senna currently in fourth place, only picking up 3, and that extends Alain Prost's lead very comfortably. Now, let's say Damon happened to find himself leading consistently and comfortably in Silverstone. Do you think that the team would say to Damon, move over and let Prost get maximum points? Or would they do as what was maybe believed was carried out in 1955, when Fangio and Stirling Moss were racing for the British Grand Prix, and Fangio said on the day, I couldn't beat Stirling Moss. Now, many people thought that Fangio was very generous in his gesture to Stirling Moss almost 38 years ago. Will that situation arise again in 1993? But here is danger for Rubens Barrichello. He's got Ayrton Senna behind him, and of course immediately behind Senna is Michael Andretti.
And Andretti again 2 seconds faster with 2 laps to go, so it's a nail-biting finish for the Jordan team. And of course Rubens Barrichello, the young Brazilian, 21 years of age, and he could score his first World Championship points in his 8th Grand Prix. When Alain Prost crosses the line, he is gonna start his last lap, so that's about a lap and a half to go for Barrichello. Well, it's nail-biting. And then Alain Prost is going to start the last lap with about a second lead over Damon Hill. Now, he shouldn't be able to relax that much on the last lap, John.
I think he can relax a little bit. I don't see that Damon is in any position to offer any threat. And as you see the last lap, the Dernier Tour. So this is the last time that we will see Alain Prost at racing speed exiting Estoril. And it was just under a second the distance between the two of them, and really the gap between Hill and Prost and Hill throughout the Grand Prix never exceeded 3 or so seconds. Damon closing up under braking, but in reality that's just for Damon. He did that for himself.
So Michael Andretti's lost a lot of time. He has lost a lot of time over... Oh no, he's passed Barrichello, sorry.
Yes.
Michael Andretti is past Rubens Barrichello with 1 lap to go. So that is sad. Very good from Michael Andretti. He's driven a very good race indeed.
Well, the speed that Andretti was driving at, it was not inevitable, but very likely indeed that he would very quickly catch up to Eric Comas and Rubens Barrichello. And on that 71st lap, he made it past Barrichello. So now it'll come down to the counting of points in this end of the first half of the 1993 season, plus then your next best finishers. And a 7th place is a pretty good finish for the Jordan team. It may just be sufficient to keep them in the points.
Alain Prost wins the French Grand Prix, his home Grand Prix, Renault's home Grand Prix. He wins it 0.3 of a second. Margin was it with teammate Damon Hill, who drove an outstanding Grand Prix here in France. Michael Schumacher finishes the third, 20.8 seconds behind Damon Hill. Now John, I'm sure Rubens Barrichello is still in front of Michael Andretti, or was he a lap down? Oh, Barrichello slowed down.
Barrichello, he comes across the line, he stops, but Michael Andretti had taken that 6th place away on the 71st lap. But of course, what I think was confusing the situation was that Ayrton Senna was still ahead of Michael Andretti, but Andretti was a lap down on Senna.
Anyway, Prost, Hill, Schumacher, Senna, Brundle, Andretti. That is the top 6 here in France. A very good 7th position is there for Rubens Barrichello, an 8th place for Christian Fittipaldi, and again a top 10 finish for the Minardi team. Philippe Alliot soldiers on to 9th, Riccardo Patrese after an unexpected pit stop in 10th position. Thierry Boutsen 11th, Aguri Suzuki in 12th, just in front of Derek Warwick, Gerhard Berger 14th, and last of the finishers was Andrea de Cesaris, who started last as well.
Well, it was a very interesting French Grand Prix. I think that the end result was never really in doubt. It was going to be a victory for Renault, it was going to be a victory for Williams. It would have been wonderful for all the British fans, and with the British Grand Prix at Silverstone in a week's time, to have had Damon Hill stand on the winner's podium. Well, I think it's a great prelude to the British Grand Prix. And as we said a few moments earlier, this will be Damon Hill's turf. He knows Silverstone so well, probably in fact he knows it better than Alain Prost. For the amount of testing that Williams do at Silverstone and the amount of time that Damon Hill spent testing, first of all for Nigel Mansell, then for himself and Alain Prost, that has got to be an opportunity that Damon Hill is looking forward to.
Well, we look at the official result of the French Grand Prix. Alain Prost is extending his championship lead. Ayrton Senna only getting 3 points, so he is on 45 now, and Alain Prost moves on to 57 points. Damon Hill is still third in the championship, now on 28, and Michael Schumacher with third places on 24th position, still fourth in the championship. Martin Brundle is still in fifth. There we see it on our screen, just in front of teammate Mark Blundell, who's sixth on 6 points. Locked in there with Johnny Herbert, Leto Fittipaldi, Patrese and Berger are 8th, and Jean Alesi is in 12th position on 4 points. And of course, there is the rest of the standings. Andretti, Elio Babazza, who drove his last Grand Prix for the Minardi team, Wendlinger and Zanardi all 1 point. In the Constructors' World Championship, the lead of Williams-Renault is even bigger. Another 16 points are added to their total, and they are now on 85 points. McLaren on 48, then it's Benetton on 29, Ligier moves up to, or is in 4th on 15th, Ferrari's got 9, and then it's Lotus, Minardi, Sauber and LaRousse. We're waiting for the drivers to get to the rostrum here in Magny-Cours, and the grandstand are filled. And before we do that, we're going to take a very short break here in Eurosport. Please join us after that for the rostrum, and of course we're going to stay here in Magny-Cours till the interviews.
Having done an enormous amount of work to get the right sponsors, as a result of which they get the right money, as a result of which they can get the right equipment, the right engines from Renault. And when you put that lot together under the leadership of Frank Williams and Patrick Head, the technical director, and give Adrian Newey, the design head of Williams, the opportunity to put together the best possible package, this is the result. I fear that in many ways Prost's dominant win here in France and Damon Hill's equally dominant second position is going to fuel the political fires and the battle between the constructors represented by FOCA, the Formula One Constructors Association, and the governing body of the sport, who are trying to make things cheaper and more competitive. You can't blame them for that, but there is an enormous amount of controversy about how to achieve that end. Well, that's as may be. What we came here today to see was the French Grand Prix. We've seen it, they've seen it, they're on their way home now, and all the dignitaries are here, as they always come, to the French Grand Prix at Magny-Cours, and before that to the Paul Ricard circuit. And we've seen Alain Prost win for the 5th time this year to increase his points score to 57, which means to say that he's now 12 points ahead of Ayrton Senna. When this race began, he was 5 points ahead of him. Damon Hill is closer to Senna in 3rd position, Damon Hill in the Drivers' Championship, and there's a very happy Frenchman. We've seen that picture many, many times in the past. Prost for driving for McLaren and Ferrari, and now Williams as the national anthem sounds.
And now for the winning constructor.
Alain Prost, having listened to the French national anthem for his victory and the British national anthem for his team's win in the Constructors' Championship, happily takes his 6th French Grand Prix win prize, with a very happy Damon Hill alongside him, who scored points yet again this year, having already done so in Brazil and Donington and Monaco and in Canada. And Michael Schumacher, who always manages to look happy, and he's got every reason for looking happy this time, because this is the 5th time in 8 races that he has finished on the rostrum for the first 3 places. And Michael Schumacher, I remind you, is only in his 2nd full season of Grand Prix racing, having started with the Jordan and then the Benetton teams in 1991. This is undoubtedly one of the most outstanding drivers that Germany has ever produced, and that is the greatest Grand Prix driver of all time, Alain Prost, because in winning here today, he's now raised his wins total to 49, just 1 win off a half-century of victories in Grand Prix racing, a quite incredible achievement. Well, will the 50th be at Silverstone for the British Grand Prix next weekend, I'm sorry. Will Damon Hill win a Grand Prix for the first time in his short career at Silverstone next Sunday? Whichever way it goes, it'll be a good race, and we look forward to talking to you about it.
E da TV2, com quem estivemos em contacto desde as 13 horas e 55, 13 e 55, não há cerimónia, como é habitual, de champanhe. Eu já não me lembrava disso aqui em França. E pronto, senhor espectador.
Na terra de Champagne não há celebração,
não há celebração
de champanhe do pódio.
Российское телевидение планирует вести также трансляцию. До встречи в Великобритании. Я благодарю Алексея Буркова и всех тех, кто помогал мне на Шаболовке вести этот телефонный репортаж из Франции. До свидания, всего доброго. Сергей Ческидов, Маникур.
Quite important to win his own Grand Prix, and happy for them, and did a very good rest, good weekend, good pole position, and the first 1 and 2 for the team this year. Fantastic for Renault and Elf in France. I mean, it's quite it's part of a very happy weekend for the team.
I mean, there was a couple of things with my pit stop. The first of all was I planned to come in, and it was all expected that I would come in on that lap, and it just happened that 2 cars went in the pit lane at exactly the same time. But then when I came out, Andretti got out just ahead of me, and then just as we got to the end of the pit lane, we were at full chat, and Sauber, I think, pulled out in front of us. So it was very nearly an accident at the end of the pit lane, which was an alarming moment, and I very nearly didn't get out of the pit. But and then when I got out, of course, I was I'd had a lap or 2 before Alain popped out in front of me, and I had the advantage of slightly warmer tyres, and I could battle with him for a bit, but then his tyres heated up and he managed to stay in front.
Johnny